Hello and thank you for watching. I'm Jennifer Bowman with Olympia Piano, and this is part one of a three-part tutorial for Beethoven's Für Elise. I've split it into three sections because each tutorial will concentrate on one section of the piece. I like to be really detailed when talking about rhythm, so I thought it would be easiest to just split it into three. So this tutorial will be on the A section of the piece, which is this part here. And before I begin the tutorial, I want to mention it's important to have a good edition. I'm using the Celebration Series Royal Conservatory Level 7 edition of the music because it's very up to date with the correct notes and rhythms and articulation. So I'll put a link to that in the description. So the way I'm going to approach this video is just to start at the beginning of the piece and address everything chronologically. So now let's start at the beginning and go through the piece chronologically. You're going to see the time signature at the beginning of the piece, 3/8. That top number, 3, tells you the number of beats in a measure, in this case 3. That's the number that you will count to every time before starting over. And then the bottom number 8 tells you which type of note gets a beat. So in this case, it's an eighth note. Every eighth note is going to get its own number when we're counting. So 1, 2, 3 for those eighth notes. If we take a look at the very first measure of the piece, you'll notice that there are only 2 16th notes, which would only equal 1 beat. So this measure is called a pickup measure. There's 1 beat in this measure, and you can find the other 2 beats in the last measure of the piece. I think it's really nice to have a pickup measure in this piece because then you can really start to feel the rhythm of the piece before you begin to play. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to count out the first 2 beats and then start playing on beat 3 for that pickup measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Now, if you take a look at the whole first section, which by the way is called the A section, the first 4 lines of the piece, you'll notice that most of the notes are 16th notes. So when we count this piece, we're going to use subdivisions in the counting so we can line up everything really nicely. What I mean is instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, we're going to insert the word and in between those numbers. So that will give us something to say for every single 16th note as well. So the first 2 measures will sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 1 and 2 and so forth. So you hear I'm saying something on every single note that I'm playing in this first section. And in fact, during the A section, every single beat will have something played on the subdivision except for 1 time in this whole first section. And that happens in the first ending, that part that's highlighted in green there. You see the arrow pointing to that 16th note rest with those 2 knobs on it. That's the only spot where we don't have something going on this whole first A section. So if I start in measure 6, which is the beginning of that second line, you'll hear just that moment with nothing going on. So I'm going to play 6 and then return back to the beginning so you'll hear what I'm talking about. Here's measure 6. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. That's the only time there's nothing going on one of those subdivisions. And so if you really want to check and make sure that you're playing it in rhythm, you can put your metronome, instead of on an 8th note, put it on a 16th note and then play a note with every single click like this. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, and you just try to stay with the click and so forth. So in the A section, actually putting your hands together is not too complicated because the only time they're playing at the same time is on beat 1. Other than that, they're taking turns and passing the music to each other. So first we start with right, 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 together, left, left, right, 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 together, left, left, right, 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 and so forth. So the only time they're playing together is on beat 1. Now, I want you to take a look at measures 12 through 14, and that comes on the 3rd line in my book. This is a really beautiful transition and one of the most fun places to play. And sometimes it can look more complicated than it actually is. You know how I was just talking about how something is happening on every single subdivision, and that is true here also. It just, on the music, looks a little more complicated because there's all the pedal and the slur markings, and then you're switching clefs and switching hands. But take a look up above. I've organized just the rhythm above the actual music, so you can see that there's still something happening on every subdivision. So all you have to do to play this part really well is just learn the notes and patterns, so then you can just look down at your hands and focus on the rhythm. So first part of the pattern is highlighted in yellow. This is 4 different octaves. So when you look at the diagram, the blue circle is referring to the left hand playing what the right hand just played. And then the red circles are indicating, even though those notes look different, they're actually the same key on the piano. So the left hand plays, and then right hand's going to take this note and play it. Left hand over the top, and right hand. So if we do that in rhythm, we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. The last note of every octave will be on a number. So that's the first part of the pattern, 4 octaves. Now follow that by 3 groups of half steps. So again, look in the yellow. This is the second part of our pattern. It's a pattern of 3 half steps, D sharp and E. And even though the hands are written on different staffs, they're playing the exact same notes, D sharp and E. So it's going to be left, right, left. So we put all that together. We've got first the octave, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. Now 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, and then back to the melody. So you're going to have this section, this little transition kind of section, 3 times in the piece. I forgot to mention one thing, and I've just highlighted that in green. At the beginning, the left hand's going to hop from this low E to here, and you'll have the pedal on, so you just do that kind of quickly. 1 and 2 and 3. So let's do that all one more time. So I'm going to talk you through that whole transition, and hopefully you can just do it looking at the keys instead. So let me do this in super slow motions. We have 1, move up an octave, and 2, right hand started where left hand finished, and 3, left hand plays what right hand just played, and 1, right hand thumb where left hand thumb was, and 2, so we've just had 4 of those. Now 3 half steps, and 3, and 1, and 2, now melody. Now all of that one time without stopping. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3, left hand, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and back to the melody. By the way, in this first A section, the melody always has 3 high E's. So sometimes it starts right on E, like at the beginning, E, E, E. And then the second one starts on the low E, 1, 2, 3. And then the third one starts on a D sharp, 1, 2, 3. But I want you to get in the habit of hearing these high E's in the melody, because something important is going to come up a little bit later having to do with this melody. So to recap, in the A section, this first part, first 4 lines of the piece, we're going to have something happening on every single subdivision of 16ths, except for that one in measure 7. And when the hands play together at the same time, that happens on beat 1. So 16th note subdivisions, beat 1, together on beat 1, together on beat 1, then they're taking turns, and so forth. This is the end for the tutorial for part 1 of Für Elise, the A section. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, which will be coming very soon. Thanks again for watching.